I had a purpose before everybody had an opinion.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
You want Philly?
Chase Utley, you are the man.
You come out backyard and you try to start something, you always get your butt kicked.
The prayers have been answered.
How about those Eagles, baby?
And Rio Muto can run for days.
Can you feel what's about to happen on this field, man?
A perfect game. Roy Halladay has thrown the second perfect game in Philadelphia Phillies history.
All right, so we are back. Episode 2 of Philly Talk. A lot has happened in the past week. The Eagles obviously had a game on Thursday night. The Phillies had a couple games against the Braves, the Cardinals. And obviously, to start off the video, a lot has happened in the NFL. First thing, of course, gotta send out, all the prayers and healing in the world to Nick Chubb. What a gruesome injury for him to suffer. What a terrible injury for him to suffer. Couldn't have happened to a worse guy. This guy, extremely humble from all accounts that we hear about him. Never see his names in headlines. Never see him, so much as say anything. He's a very quiet guy. From what I've seen from people speaking on him and his work in the area of Cleveland, he does so much for that city, and all the work he does, and you never hear a bit about it. Just from all accounts, what we've heard, just an absolutely humble guy, and it absolutely sucks for him to have such an injury like that. It in my eyes, it could be career altering. That type of injury, especially for the running back position, it's going to be extremely tough for him to fight back from that, and it's just heartbreaking to see him go through an injury like that. So, got to get that out the way and, send all the healing in the world to Nick Chubb. Some other news, quite a lot of injuries actually. Saquon Barkley also went down with an injury that might keep him out for a couple weeks, which was tough to see. I know there was some more names. The Bengals, they lost to the Ravens by 3, and now there's reports that they may be mishandling Joe Burrow's injury. That, from what I've heard, Jamar Chase actually wanted them to sit Burrow till like week 5 to start off the season, but he came back to play, and now that might be an issue, and that might mess them up, because if he has to rest now, it's like in that, like, it's still the beginning of the season, but like it's sort of in that middle point, and like when you could have just taken the first games out and, one, even like you could have easily split the games for whatever. If like Joe Burrow missed 4 weeks, you could have easily split it 2-2 and still had a chance for playoffs. But now they're 0-2 with Burrow potentially being out. Who knows what can happen there? Anthony Richardson also went out with a concussion, I believe it was. Hoping the best for him. He's been killing it. Obviously the Falcons beat the Packers 25-24. The Bills, looking like themselves, beat the Raiders 38-10. Devontae Adams, I believe, also went down. I mainly know about this because of my fantasy team. I had Nick Chubb, I had Devontae Adams, and I got the report that he went down in the game and went to the blue tent. I'm pretty sure Jalen Waddle went to the blue tent. Brandon Ayuk went to the blue tent, I believe. So like, not to make it about me and my fantasy team, but I'm basically, as I changed my name to in my friends league, I'm a waiver wire warrior at this point, because a ton of my players have just gone down with injury. So I'm trying to remember based off of that. The Seahawks and Lions had a close game, which was fun to see. Real good stuff there. The Lions are looking pretty impressive this season. The Colts beat the Texans 31-20. The Texans, it's good for them in the sense that they're getting these, like, I know that's 11 points, but like it's pretty close for them, But at the same time, it doesn't really help considering Arizona has your pick, and you don't want to give them a good pick. The most disappointing game in my eyes was the Chiefs and Jaguars. I thought this was going to be like a shootout. 17-9, wasn't really much action. The Bucks beat the Bears, which continues to make me worry for next week's matchup. only simply because of that defense. I think we saw quite some injuries on our side too, which we'll get into. But yeah, I'm a bit worried about that matchup, especially with the injuries we have. But still remain faithful. I couldn't believe some of the plays Justin Fields was making in this game. Hoping to see him improve upon all that. The Titans beat the Chargers 27-24. The Chargers are truly looking, I know it's just the first 2 games and it could be an overreaction, but they are really looking like a disappointing team to start off. They just don't seem to have it all together, and a lot of the pieces in play obviously aren't going to help them when, like a lot of people point to Brandon Staley as a big reason for their struggles, but then also it's like, I don't know, they did so well in this game. Like I remember seeing a stat like they did like all this stuff that basically outscored the Titans, and yet they still lost. The Giants came back, I believe, and beat the Cardinals. Yeah, they came back down 20. They came back, not the win you want, because why are you down to the Cardinals to begin with? But they get away with the win, and like I said, Saquon's injured, hoping the best for him. The 49ers beat the Rams in a close one, 30-23. One-score game. Pretty good stuff there. McCaffrey obviously went off as always. Kyron Williams looking like the lead back in that Rams field. And then the Rams receiver, I hope I pronounced it right, Puka Nacua, I believe is how it's pronounced. Don't know for sure, but he's been popping off. He went off not only in fantasy but in game as well. 15 receptions for 147 yards. I believe he has the most receptions and yards for a rookie receiver in their first 2 games. Matt Stafford's just been force feeding him that ball. Pretty crazy stuff there. The Cowboys beat the Jets 30-10. The Jets are just going to struggle without Aaron Rodgers now. Sucks to see, but that's the reality of it. The Commanders beat the Broncos 35-33. I have a friend who's a Broncos fan. Couldn't believe that they blew that lead that they had. I believe they were up. Man, I forgot how much they were up at one point, but yeah, they blew quite a hefty lead. Couldn't really believe it. The Dolphins beat the Patriots 24-17. And then obviously the Monday night games, the Saints beat the Panthers 20-17, and then the Steelers beat the Browns 26-22. A lot of different injuries around, a lot of different upsets, a lot of teams looking pretty disappointing. But how about we start looking at the good of it all, which includes covering what good happened with the Phillies and the Eagles. So to start off with the good for both Philly teams, starting off with the Braves series, we'll get to it in the bad, but we end up losing the series. But I will say throughout that Braves series, that 4-game series that included a doubleheader, because when we were covering it last week, we were like halfway through it, I believe, or we needed like one more game. So this was to include that final game. We overall had some good hitting. It was mainly on the pitching staff, but we had good hitting in that Braves series. In the Cardinals series, we walked away with 2 wins, very good wins at that. Ranger picked it up, and we need all the pitching to start heating up into the playoffs, from the starters all the way to the bullpen. It's something we've been reiterating week after week with the Phillies. I have it here in the good just because of how funny it was. Bryce Harper getting ejected was just laughable because of, why is he getting ejected for what he got ejected for? It was just laughable. As my friend always likes to say, the show on full display. I don't know. It's just baffling to me that these umps are always getting that upset and all that. And I don't know. I just found that funny. But yeah, overall the Cardinals series, we saw great hitting from the team. Again, the pitching really stepped it up. Just need that to be the consistent thing heading into the playoffs. Moving on to Thursday night's game, the Eagles versus Vikings. Overall, we saw a great rushing attack. DeAndre Swift was him in this game. He was just absolutely feasting. And I honestly enjoyed seeing them put that sort of faith in him, because it's something that overall I applaud for the entirety of the game. So when you look at it, DeAndre Swift, he had 28 attempts, 175 yards, a touchdown, and his longest run was 43 yards. So the one thing I really appreciate from this game, people are being hard on Brian Johnson, our OC, but I think the one thing we can take away from this game and appreciate for him is his adaptability. Because early in the game, we saw them trying to get the run game going with Jalen Hurts, and it was struggling, you know. The Vikings defense, props to them, were able to recognize at points when he was going to run, when he was going to take the ball himself instead of handing it off to Swift. And Brian Johnson was able to recognize that, hey, Hurts is sort of struggling in this run game that we're trying to dial up. Let's shift and make Swift the focus. Look what happened, you know. 175 yards and a touchdown on the day, 28 carries. Absolute workhorse from DeAndre Swift in the absence of Kenneth Gainwell. There are still areas to improve, though, such as situational play calling, which we'll get into with the bad. But overall, if there's one thing I can applaud Brian Johnson for from this game, it's the fact that he adapted in that run game. The D-line and O-line were great throughout the game. I truly think they were difference makers, like I was saying in my sort of pre-game predictions. They truly made the difference in this game. We saw Jordan Davis and Josh Sweat get sacks. The O-line held up pretty great. Obviously, the main highlight passing-wise was Devontae Smith. Smitty was great in this game. He had that one crazy catch, you know, and Hurts was going to him often, you know. Let's see, Devontae Smith ended off with 131 yards and a touchdown, the longest being 63. He had 4 catches for that. Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown had decent games, 4 catches for 29 for A.J. Brown, 6 catches for 22 yards from Dallas Goedert. Overall, it was a real great game. It was a decent game for those guys. Decent game for Hurts as well, you know. Nothing too crazy. 18 passes for 193 yards and a touchdown. He did have a bad interception, which we'll get into obviously again in the bad. Rushing wise, he had 12 attempts for 35 yards, 2 touchdowns, which were obviously the sneaks. Overall, decent game on that side of the ball, you know, but I have a bit more to say in terms of just what I found kind of bad. So starting off with the bad, starting with the Phillies, they lose that Braves series, and this is truly going to be a tough team for the Phillies if they run into them in the playoffs. And I know so many fans, you know, they want to be optimistic. They want to mention last year and how anything can happen in the playoffs. But that's not going to happen if this team continues to play like they did this series. You know, like the hitting was well, but the pitching was terrible. And the thing about last year that people forget is just how much of a lightning in a bottle moment it was, that everything was hot in that moment's time, you know? Like, truly, if you go back and really look at it, like you look at the pitching stats from certain playoff series, like the NLCS against the Padres, Zach Wheeler in 2 games had a 1.38 ERA, only allowed 2 earned runs. Ranger, he started 1 game, he made 2 appearances in games, he only allowed 1 earned run, had an ERA of 1.59, you know. Jose Alvarado in the 3 games he appeared, 0 ERA, didn't allow any runs. Sir Anthony Dominguez had a 2.25 ERA, he only allowed 1 earned run, he had 7 strikeouts in that series against the Padres. Alvarado had 4. Zach Wheeler in his 2 games had 16, you know. You look at the NLDS pitching, you know, Zach Wheeler, that one jumps up a bit because he allowed 3 earned runs, but it was still 4.5. You look at Nola in that series against the Braves, 0 ERA. In the 1 game that he played against the Braves, he let up 5 hits, didn't allow any earned runs, struck out 6 people, you know. Ranger, 2.7 ERA, only allowed 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts in the 1 game he played. Our relievers, again, Sir Anthony Dominguez, 0 ERA in the 2 games he appeared, 6 strikeouts. He pitched 3 innings. Jose Alvarado, 2.45 ERA, only 1 earned run allowed, 5 strikeouts in the 3 games he appeared in. You know, the wild card series, looking at the pitching from our guys again. Sir Anthony Dominguez, 1 game he appeared in, 0 ERA, 2 strikeouts. Aaron Nola, 6 strikeouts, 0 earned runs in the 1 game he had, 4 strikeouts for Zach Wheeler, 0 ERA, 0 earned runs allowed. Zach Eflin had only 1 earned run allowed in his appearance. Obviously he's not with the team anymore, but showcasing that like the pitching was at their very best in those different series. The batting itself was really well in those games. So it's like I understand the want to be optimistic and be like, man, we beat this Braves team last year in the playoffs. We could do it again. Anything can happen in a 5-game series, 7-game series, whatever. But it's going to be a struggle if you aren't able to elevate your play. You can't convince me that the way this team played in that 4-game series, obviously in the series they're playing right now, they just got a win, and a real impressive win against the Braves. But if you look at this 4-game series and you look at the one from earlier in the season where they split 2-2, I don't know if I'm convinced that they can beat this team if this is how they're going to continue to play, especially the pitching, And even on the hitting side, despite some guys being good, you still have other guys struggling. Now, I know JT just hit a home run yesterday, but in one of the, I want to say it was maybe the last game of the Braves series, you had that play where they had like 2 guys on bases, and then they had them they had 2 guys on bases. I can't remember if one of them, if it was corners. I think it was on the corners. You had, it was only 1 out. Next thing you know, it's 2 outs because JT's swinging at anything, even if it's not touching the box. And then, there was 0 outs. JT gets an out because he's swinging at anything in that box. And then Nick Castellanos comes up and hits into a double play to end the inning. And it's just like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, you can't be playing like that. And then you look at the final loss to the Cardinals. There was no reason that they should have lost this game. The pitching was abysmal. I think this was the game where Sir Anthony Dominguez gave up the home run, I want to say. I should have had this ready, but I'm pretty sure it was this game where it was just like, they were going back and forth with that Cardinals team, and then next thing you know, it's like they're having to rely on the pitching, and here comes Sir Anthony Dominguez letting up a home run in the final in one of the final innings. Hold on, let me scroll down a bit. Yeah, it was to Jordan Walker. Yeah, I remember. It was like, pitching, come on, what are we doing? Like, there was no reason for them to lose this game with the way they were playing, and yet they did. The Cardinals scored 3, then the Phillies came back and scored 3 to tie it up, then they let the Cardinals score 2, and it isn't until the 8th that they scored 2 to tie it up, and you're like, okay, it's tied, let's just hold it at a tie till we can hopefully strike in that 9th inning. But no, they let up that home run in the 8th, and they end up not being able to do anything in that 9th inning to lose the game 6-5. And it's just like, you had no business losing that game, and yet you still did. Like, it's annoying. Moving on to the Eagles side of things, I mentioned earlier, more injuries, just absolutely difficult. Avonte Maddox went down, and he could potentially be out for the season. Boston Scott and Quez Watkins left the games with injuries. Overall, the secondary just wasn't the best to me. This year, I sadly can't make the Sun jokes like last year because Jay Jettis did go off, Darius Slade did his best, but, Jay Jettis did his thing. Overall, we need help in the box because, like I mentioned it, TJ Hawkinson was just able to do the damage that he needed to do. It was real tough having to stop him without, Nakobe Dean out there, or really any sort of reliable force in the box. Again, play calling needs to improve. Too many confusing plays being chosen, especially during 2nd and 3rd down situations. Like, I didn't understand Brian Johnson's sort of ideology with some of the plays. Like, there was I forgot what play it was. I think it was like 2nd down or maybe even 3rd down. Like, they called like some weird screen, or they called for like a quarterback rush at one point. And it was just like, what are we doing here? Like, what is going through Brian Johnson's mind when he's calling some of these plays, you know. And the biggest struggle was the offense started being one-dimensional, you know. And the run game was working, so I don't mean in the sense that they just started running the ball. Like, no, if running the ball is working, you do that. But when the passing game, it became one-dimensional because all Hurts was doing was throwing to Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert. And you think back to last year where A.J. Brown went off the first week and Devontae Smith didn't get a single catch. So the next game, you know, he started giving Devontae Smith touches and all that. And it's the same thing this year where Dallas Goedert only got one pass thrown to him in the first week, which wasn't a catch, you know. And now this week, you know, he started trying to feed the ball to Dallas Goedert, started feeding it to Devontae Smith, and it left A.J. Brown without much to do. And, you know, we have no confirmation on what was being said, but, you know, it seemed like A.J. Brown's frustrations were with not getting the ball. And personally, I agree with him. Why does this offense need to only force feed one guy? You have A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devontae Smith. Keep that defense guessing who's going to get the ball. And if your argument is that we were up in the game, why does that matter? Taking our foot off the gas and being conservative is what almost cost us games last season. And look at the plays afterwards. A.J. Brown would have had a touchdown twice if it wasn't for Penny holding on that one play. And the play where, you know, the DPI was debatable. Was that a catchable ball for A.J. Brown? Was that interference? Who knows? You know, that's up to the analysts to decide and showcase those. But yeah, it was like two different plays where it was almost a touchdown for him, and the circumstances for why it wasn't a touchdown were out of his hands, you know. And so it's like I agree if that's what the frustration was of him not getting the ball, because it's true. Why do we have to force feed different guys, you know? And I get it, you want to feed the hot hand, but, you know, when you look back at this game, it's like A.J. Brown was getting open on different plays. Devontae Smith was getting open on different plays. Dallas Goedert was doing his job of being that safety net. And it's like, why is it that our offense has to be so one-dimensional? Why can we not develop an offense that properly incorporates these three guys, you know? Along with the run game, you know, but focusing on the pass game, why is it that we can't find an offense that incorporates this? That where each guy gets, you know, 5 to 7 receptions each and getting plays designed for them to get open and get touchdowns and all that, you know? Why is it that our offense has to be, let's, you know, basically pull what Matt Stafford did to a lesser degree. Let's get one receiver the ball 7, 8, 9 times and only throw it to him, you know? Like, kind of like how Matthew Stafford, you know, 15 throws to Puka Nacua. It's like the same thing here where it's like, you know, in this game, it was it was pretty evenly spread out, 5, 6, and 7. But when you were actually watching the game, in terms of that, it was just like it didn't seem all that much, and especially because when the offense, when the rushing started working, they kind of stopped with the passing. And you know, Devontae Smith's the only real one to go off for any major yardage, 131 yards. But again, even when you're up, why are you starting to become conservative? I know if you still remain aggressive, there's a chance that you can mess up plays. You can give the other team a chance to come back, which, you know, at times the Vikings were fighting. But it just, like, it confuses me as to, like, why we feel we need to take our foot off the gas once we start, you know, doing enough, you know? Like, I don't know if any of this is just making sense, but, like, that's just sort of my frustration watching this offense a lot of times. It's like, they force feed one guy, they be conservative, they don't really dial up any like big time plays, you know, like other than the 2 deep balls. It's like I don't see them dialing up enough plays that utilizes A.J. Brown to his best ability of being a physical receiver and obviously the long ball, you know. They designed these plays for Devontae Smith to, you know, use his shiftiness to get around the field, you know. There was a long ball point for him, you know. It's just like, I don't know, it feels weird to have 2 great wide receiver ones and not do our best to utilize them to their best abilities at times, you know. And I don't understand this mindset of, oh, well, sometimes one guy's gonna go off and the other isn't, you know. I get it, you know, sometimes AJ Brown's gonna face some tough matchups and, you know, that'll open the door for Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert to get more touches, to get more open plays. But, you know, it's just confusing in a game like this where it's like clearly both guys were going and doing work, but the offense, the play calling just wasn't the best, and I don't know, that's just my one thing I really want to see improving from the Eagles is improving this offense, especially, and while we're on the topic of that, let's just transition. Looking forward for both the Phillies and Eagles, what needs to sort of change as we go forward. So, going forward, obviously, the playoffs are very slowly approaching for the Phillies. Again, I just keep having to reiterate this week after week that pitching staff has to get it together, and you can't suffer many losses coming up, We are literally like 2 weeks away, I want to say, from playoffs. You need to maintain that first wild card spot. No more stupid losses. You can't lose that series to Pittsburgh. You can't lose either of the series to the Mets. It would be absolutely embarrassing if they did. The bats need to stay consistent. That's something that can't cool down as they head into the playoffs. They need to remain hot for that. They need to start consistently playing guys during this final stretch. I understand wanting to keep them healthy, wanting to keep them refreshed, but to me, defense matters more. So that means Schwarber has to permanently be DH unless there's... I can't even say unless there's rest days because we're approaching playoff time. There is not going to be rest days, It's going to come to time where these guys have to get used to playing every single game to help propel this team forward, So Schwarber, he has to remain in that DH spot so that we can have our best defensive unit out there in Marsh and Rojas out there. Harper, he has to play first base every day. We can't do this thing where we switch him off to DH and have to put Schwarber back in left. Especially because, if anything, if we're going to want Harper to consistently play first base in the playoffs, he needs to get all the reps he can before then so that he's not making any errors and he feels comfortable at that position during the highest intensity of the game, The Braves series is going to be tough. Has me worried a bit for our playoff chances and seeding just because it's a bit of a tough matchup, We won the first game, hoping to see what we can do in the next two. As far as the Eagles go, the Eagles just need to unlock that offense. Like I said last week, man, you're facing a tough defense in Tampa. That's 3 tough defenses back to back to back. No more one-dimensional offense, This is a game where you're really going to have to be super unpredictable with the run game, with the pass game. If Kenneth Gainwell is healthy, I'm telling you, Kenneth Gainwell and DeAndre Swift, just like how you do with the defensive line where you shift all these guys out for certain plays, do that. And the same thing for the passing game. Again, like I said, keep them guessing, Just keep them guessing on who you're going to throw it to. Throw in all these different plays that's designed to get the ball to a different guy each play so that they don't know who to focus on in the game, Defensively, linebacker and safety are needed immediately, man. Immediately, they need to figure something out. They need something there. They need something. They can't just be content with what they got. They have to be risky. They have to go make a trade for something, just something to help out that back unit and all that, and over the middle, it's gonna be tough. You're gonna need some help because Avonte Maddox is out. You're going up against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin this week. It's gonna be a tough matchup. They're really gonna need help. But overall, I'm optimistic that they can still win that game. I'm still optimistic that the Phillies are likely gonna make the playoffs. But I just need to see more consistency from the Phillies. I need to see change from the Eagles, and I'll leave you with this. 3 things in life are guaranteed: death, taxes, and people whining and complaining like babies because their team can't run a simple quarterback sneak.